Welcome back to the Nerdy Grail and welcome to another franchise discussion, again on another big franchise from Dreamworks Animation. So the last time I did a big franchise discussion, in particular when it comes to Dreamworks, is we had a little look at the Shrek franchise because of obviously the upcoming Shrek 5 and just because I thought it was time to reflect upon those, especially with the delay of Shrek 5 as well and all the thoughts and theories flying around. I thought I would tackle that franchise. But another major franchise within Dreamworks that had a new film which came out last year, which I only just got round to actually watching, is none other than the Kung Fu Panda franchise, which is a franchise that I hold quite dear and is definitely up there for me alongside Shrek and even Madagascar to a degree as one of my favourites in terms of the Dreamworks line of movies and animations. And so in today's video, I thought we would discuss the four major movies in the franchise, especially now that I've finally seen the fourth movie. And a bit like the Shrek franchise discussion, I'd sort of go over like the basics, how well it did, how it's seen, my personal opinions on the movies, and just give you a bit of a ranking in terms of which one's my favourite to which one's my least favourite. So strap right in as we get started on this journey, which started in 2008 and is still going strong. Well, it depends on what your thoughts are on Kung Fu Panda 4, but we did have the last film in 2024 and it is still going on. Let's dive into the Kung Fu Panda franchise, starting back in 2008 with Kung Fu Panda number 1. We begin our journey back on June 6, 2008 with the release of Kung Fu Panda 1, which for many people is considered to be either the best or up there as like one of their top 2 out of the 4 movies. And I can't deny the first one is such an enjoyable watch. The animation still holds strong, and that's one thing that's quite consistent in the Kung Fu Panda franchise, in terms of the movies anyway, is that their animation seems to be more or less the same, and their style of doing things hasn't really changed. Unlike obviously Shrek, which had a bit of backlash for the new designs and the new way they're doing the animation for the 5th movie. Kung Fu Panda 4, upon watching it, is more or less in line with Kung Fu Pandas 1, 2 and 3. But I really did enjoy Kung Fu Panda 1. The simple premise of a panda who is basically in the wrong place at the wrong time, but it almost turns out to be the right place at the right time because he inadvertently gets selected as the next Dragon Warrior, but in order to protect the Valley of Peace, which is where they live, by this great grand tortoise known as Oogway, who hands on the baton to him, and he gets handed then to his little apprentice, Master Shifu, and has to train alongside the Furious Five in order to become the new Dragon Warrior, and save the Valley of Peace from the main antagonist of this movie, played by Ian McShane, who is known as Tai Lung, who does return in the 4th movie, but is a main antagonist for the first movie. And as an antagonist, he's really, really good. And he's a good antagonist because he relates really well to our core characters. He's got history with Oogway. He's got history with Master Shifu. He's got a bit of a rivalry going on with Po because he believes that he was destined to be the true Dragon Warrior. And Po doesn't deserve that mantle, and he was sort of cheated out of it due to Oogway sensing that there could be a bit of darkness in his heart and didn't fully feel like Tai Lung's actions and heart was always in the right place. Jack Black does a fantastic job as Po. Good blend of comedy with a little bit of serious stuff in there. His interactions with all the Furious Five, who are your other core protagonists, so to speak, with Angelina Jolie as Tigress, you got Seth Rogen as Mantis, Lucy Liu as Viper, Jackie Chan as Monkey, David Cross as Crane. They all bring a good blend into the movie, and it is done really, really well, and they're given a lot of screen time. You can tell that the characters are a bit frustrated, especially Tigress, who believed that she was supposed to be the true Dragon Warrior, and Po just sort of fell out of the sky by accident because he was trying to see the initiation ceremony but couldn't get in. Po is living down in the city with his adopted dad, Mr. Ping, who is a goose. So obviously, when you first see it at the start of the movie and you find out that his dad's a goose, you're like, well, okay, obviously he was an orphan who was then taken in, which they do go into more detail in that in the second and third movies. But yeah, and I think the final confrontation at the end, the big battle when Tai Lung escapes from prison and returns to the Valley of Peace to seek his revenge, is done really, really well. His interaction with the Furious Five and how he mocks Po, but by the end respects Po as a worthy adversary, especially when you get to the fourth movie, is done really nicely. Because Po, through the movie, you know, has a bit of an on-off relationship with Master Shifu, who you could call as a mini-antagonist, because he is trying to get Po to quit being the Dragon Warrior, because he doesn't believe that Oogway made the right choice, but Oogway sort of convinces him otherwise, and so he does end up having to train Po when the Furious Five go missing after seeking out Tai Lung to stop him from getting to the Valley of Peace to get the Dragon Scroll to learn the secrets of being the Dragon Warrior. Po and Shifu's relationship is on-off, but they have a really lovely bond and relationship by the end. And then they have a great, funny, but serious battle between Po and Tai Lung. And I just love Po's catchphrase of Skadoosh. I think it is so funny. And Jack Black, like I said, does a fantastic job. I enjoyed the first movie. What would I rate the first movie out of 10? Well, it's definitely up there for me in terms of my enjoyment. I would say I would give the first movie an 8 out of 10 because it's a movie that I've watched time and time again, and I'm really looking forward to rewatching it now on the 4K edition that arrived the other day. So I would recommend watching Kung Fu Panda 1. If you're going to watch any of them, I obviously start from the beginning, but if you can only choose one, yeah, the first one's always a good way to start. But it's not my personal favourite. Now, my personal favourite is coming next. So we need to skip forward a couple of years to 2010 and have a little look at Kung Fu Panda number 2. So just before I go into talking about Kung Fu Panda 2, quickly on to Kung Fu Panda 1 again for a moment. I just wanted to mention like the run times for the movies, which are pretty equal amongst all the films. Roughly of a runtime of about an hour and a half. So the first movie was 92 minutes, so an hour and 32 minutes. And this movie, Kung Fu Panda 2, is 1 minute shorter at 1 hour 31 minutes or 91 minutes and had roughly about the same budget, and both movies made a ton of money. So the first movie had a budget of 130 million and made over 631 million and was received fairly positively, hence why a second movie got greenlit, and then in 2011 we got Kung Fu Panda 2, which had a budget of 150 million and made over 665 million and was even nominated in 2011 at the Academy Awards as one of the best animated pictures, which is fantastic. And if you haven't guessed already, yes, this film is actually my favourite in the franchise. I think Kung Fu Panda 2 is the best at everything. I think the animation is at its strongest here. I think the plot is really good. It's got a massive tonal shift from all the rest. It is the darkest in the franchise. The comedy is still there. You still get that Kung Fu Panda comedy, but it is very dialed down. And Lord Shen, who's our new antagonist for this movie, played by Gary Oldman, is the best antagonist in this franchise. He too does briefly cameo in Kung Fu Panda 4, but in a non-speaking role, which I was gutted about. But I adore Kung Fu Panda 2. It is really, really good. And you delve into Po's backstory a lot more, which I did briefly mention in the first movie, because in this one, Po starts to question where he comes from a lot. Especially after an encounter, because now he's established as the Dragon Warrior. Him and the Furious Five go off to save different areas of the Valley of Peace and save China from various threats. They come across this wolf gang who are stealing various metals and resources from a local village. And one of the main leaders, this wolf character, has a tattoo or this symbol that's on his shoulder that distracts Po and causes him to have a bit of a flashback to when he was a child, and he doesn't quite know why. And so goes back to talk to his dad, and his dad reveals that he was found in a little crate outside and he was rescued and was an orphan. And so Po starts to question where he came from. And like Tai Lung in the first movie, where I said he's a great villain because he has strong connections to our main characters, Lord Shen is very similar because he is the one who sort of created a mass extermination of the pandas, causing panda tribes to flee from the village, caused Poe's parents to leave him behind by accident because Lord Shen was scared that his soothsayer, there's a soothsayer character played by Michelle Yeoh, who's this goat character who's also his advisor, who said that one day his reign of terror will end by a warrior of black and white, so the colours of the panda. And so he sought out to destroy all pandas, which caused Poe to get his separation from his parents. So he's got that personal link to Poe, and he's a peacock and has the symbol that was on the wolf's arm all over his feathers. So Poe really has to try and have a mental struggle, because in these films there is a little bit of kung fu and a little bit of a message they're trying to get across in each film. And this one's core focus is on inner peace, so finding yourself, finding that calm nature, being able to focus, because Poe in this one is sort of distracted, conflicted by these newfound discoveries of, you know, realising that he is adopted and he's an orphan, discovering that there's someone who might be connected to his past. And I think it's done really, really well. The new location, because it doesn't take place in the Valley of Peace this time, where the first film does take place. This one takes us to a new location called Gongmen City, where Lord Shen is ruling, and he's taking out different kung fu warriors, and he's built this weapon that he's planning on using to destroy and rule China. And it is done really, really well. The Furious Five do join Poe on this adventure, but you notice they start to take a little bit more of a backseat to Poe, which, you know, Poe is supposed to be technically the leader, being the Dragon Warrior. But in particular, I would say like the characters like Monkey and Mantis and all take the back step. Tigress still has a fair bit to do in this movie, but she does take a bit of a back step. Master Shifu stays behind in the Valley of Peace for the time being, and then comes back during the final conflict at the end, which is done really, really well. Poe's able to combat his fears and his worries, and finds inner peace, and is able to then battle against Lord Shen, which is done really, really well. And like I said, Gary Oldman as Lord Shen is fantastic. He's slimy, he's manipulative, he's creepy. He has no feelings of remorse, and I think it's done really, really well. And I love the character of the soothsayer as well. The soothsayer is done really, really well. But yeah, fantastic movie, and I like the darker tone. I think if you were worried about the comedy in the first movie and thought, could this be a little bit more, you know, tone it down a bit, watch Kung Fu Panda 2, because it is fantastic and does that greatly. I think it's got the perfect blend of comedy, but has that dark, serious tone at the same time. And it needs to with the new discoveries it's got. But it does end on a little bit of a cliffhanger, because once they've saved the day and Poe and the Furious Five return, Lord Shen's defeated, we do get like this panning shot going all across like China, vast all through the valleys, and we get this mysterious village full of pandas who have clearly escaped to somewhere. And we get this character who turns around and says, "My son is alive." So we find out that Poe's father is still alive, which is then the main plot then of the third movie going forward. But yeah, I adore Kung Fu Panda 2. What would I rate it out of 10? Well, like I said, I gave the first movie an 8 out of 10, but this one takes it a step further for me. And so, in my opinion, Kung Fu Panda 2 is a 9 out of 10. That might seem quite high to some people, but in terms of my enjoyment and what I want in an animated movie, it gives me what I need. And so, yeah, 9 out of 10 for Kung Fu Panda 2. Great release for 2011. But obviously, the franchise doesn't stop there, because then we got to fast forward then to Kung Fu Panda 3, where we delve more into Poe's mysterious past. So moving on to 2016, we now have Kung Fu Panda 3. And I'm not going to lie, out of all four of the Kung Fu Pandas, and it might be because obviously I've just watched Kung Fu Panda 4, give it a bit of time and this one might fall same fate. Kung Fu Panda 3 is the one that springs to mind the least. You know, nothing like truly spectacular stands out to me about this movie. That's not to say that it's a bad movie or the worst in the franchise, but it's the hardest one to recollect, if I'm being perfectly honest. It's in that bit of a weird area. But it is also, so far on the list, the longest in the franchise, with a runtime of 95 minutes, so an hour and 35 minutes. Had a budget of 145 million, but only made back 518 million. So it wasn't necessarily a flop, but you can start to see that things are starting to creep in a little bit now. And had a release date of multiple different release dates. So in the UK, it was released on March 11th, 2016. But for the US, it was released earlier in January the 29th, 2016. But yeah, and it introduces us to a couple of new main characters. Our main antagonist this time is played by J.K. Simmons, this bull character from a supernatural realm known as Kai, who is after the chi of different kung fu warriors in order to escape and in order to become the strongest of them all. And all he needs is Oogways in order to fully escape and go back to the mortal realm again, which at the start he does defeat Oogway, but Oogway reveals that he wasn't really the one destined to defeat Kai and never planned on defeating him. So Kai does manage to win and then, escapes. And then you cut, obviously, to our main protagonist, still played by Jack Black, who's doing a fantastic job as Po, with the Furious Five. However, this is where you start to notice that the Furious Five's role in these movies start to wane, because they dispatch away with some of the Furious Five, like Mantis, Crane, Monkey, and Viper, go off to sort of defend the Jade Palace, or to go off to find and locate Kai and defeat him, but fall prey to him, and unfortunately then are taken out of action for most of the movie, leaving only Tigress to be the one who has to go and find Po, who, like we said in the last movie, had sort of questions about his past, and in this movie he does actually meet his biological father, played by Bryan Cranston, known as Lee Shan, who does take Po to this valley and this village filled with lots of pandas like him, to sort of give him an idea of where they've been and where, not necessarily where he came from, but so that he can meet more of his kind, because Po is more or less the only panda of his village. And so starts to adapt to life there. Obviously, Mr. Ping starts to get a little bit jealous that obviously now he's found his biological father, would he really still need him? So you've got that sort of conflict going on there. Got a bit of father rivalry going on in this movie as well. And the main focus on this movie, the last one was In a Piece. This one is Po mastering Chi. But yeah, Kai is a villain who, like I said, J.K. Simmons is fantastic. Out of the three villains we've had so far, I think he's the least memorable, but he still does have a good connection with our core characters. But this time, though, in particular, it's with Oogway, who unfortunately, in the first movie, does sadly not make it through the movie. So his connection is due to their old master. But he still has that connection. I love the relationship that Po has with his biological father, him trying to adapt to life in this new village, while, still trying to hold on to his old life as well. And you can truly see Po becoming more confident in his abilities in this movie and becoming a proper dragon warrior with a proper outfit and everything. It looks fantastic. And like I said, the animation is still fairly strong, even though I think it's at its strongest in the second movie. It is a fairly enjoyable movie. The side characters that they introduced, like all the village of pandas, they're okay. They're nothing spectacular, and none of them really spring to mind. The final fight, between Po and Kai is done really well. It's nice. It's nice that it's done in it's more like a spirit realm. It's not done in the mortal realm, so you've got nice visuals to look at when they're fighting. It's a different type of fight, which is great. But yeah, overall, what would I rate Kung Fu Panda 3 out of 10? It's definitely not as strong as the first two movies, but I wouldn't say it is anything terrible. I would say probably Kung Fu Panda 3 for me is probably maybe a 6.5 out of 10. So it's nothing amazing. It's above average, but nothing that blows me away. So I'd probably say a 6.5 out of 10. Definitely recommend watching it, because it introduces some new characters who do come into the fourth movie, and obviously it carries on Po's past. But now I can actually talk about the next movie because I've actually seen it now. So let's now jump over to 2024 and discuss the latest Kung Fu Panda in the franchise, Kung Fu Panda 4. So, as I said, I recently watched Kung Fu Panda 4, and unfortunately, if I'm being perfectly honest, compared to the first three, it is definitely my least favourite. I think this is my least favourite in the franchise. I think that, for starters, it was given a lot less budget. So it only has a budget of 85 million, and then only so far has made 520 million. So it's not like it's a box office flop, but technically it's not done the best. Unfortunately, the serious nature that the first three movies had, because all of them had a serious tone, just some had slightly higher levels in comedy than the other, is practically gone in this movie. If I'm honest, you can't really take this film seriously. It's almost like they dialed up the comedy too much. I get very Thor Love and Thunder vibes, where they implemented more comedy as the series went on. Like Thor Ragnarok has the perfect blend of the two, a bit like Kung Fu Panda 2. Thor Ragnarok has the perfect blend of comedy and seriousness, but then Thor Love and Thunder just went whoop and dialed it up to like 1500, because that's how it feels here. There's jokes galore, nothing is taken seriously. Even the conflict and the drama that goes on between our protagonists doesn't really feel believable, and the new characters they introduce aren't the strongest, if I'm perfectly honest. And like I said, in all three of the movies so far, our core antagonist is great because there's some form of connection to one of our core characters, and so then you feel the drama, you feel the suspense, you feel the tension. But the chameleon, who's the main villain, played by Viola Davis, nothing against her, she does a fantastic job, and she's very creepy, and I like the visual when she's changing into the characters and changing into these different Kung Fu masters, but she's got no relation to anybody, and if I'm honest, she's actually not really in the movie an awful lot. You spend most of the time with Po and this new character Zen, played by Awkwafina, who is in like everything at one point, who's this like Kozak fox, who's this little thief who is trying to steal from the Jade Palace, and Po ends up breaking her out of jail because she has connections to the chameleon, who Po needs to go and take down. So what is basically the plot? What I will say about Kung Fu Panda 4 is it does come full circle, because this time the whole like plot and the whole thing is now about wisdom. Po now needs to hand off the mantle of the Dragon Warrior. Shifu is telling him it's time to move on. It's time to become like a spiritual leader and let the next person take over as a Dragon Warrior. And you even get to see Po sitting in the seat that Oogway was sat in the first movie. We're watching the little contest of all the candidates going up to be the Dragon Warrior, a bit like the Furious 5 did at the start of Kung Fu Panda 1. So that was quite nice, I must admit, to come full circle there. But Po doesn't take it seriously. Not that you were expecting him to, but I feel like he does dial it up too much. Like I said, the comedy and it does affect the plot a lot. But Po's not fully ready to take on the new responsibility and doesn't quite want to give up being the Dragon Warrior. And that's sort of what this movie is. It's about being ready to move on and make a change. And it turns out that this new character, Zen, this fox, turns out to be who Po ends up choosing by the end to be the new Dragon Warrior, and ends up training her at the end of the movie. One of the big disappointing things for me in this movie, and is really noticeable, is the massive absence of the Furious 5. None of the Furious 5 are in this movie. They appear right at the end of the movie in like a music video at the end to help train Zen in order to be the Dragon Warrior, but none of them come back. You don't see Angelina Jolie or David Cross or any of our other characters, and that's really unfortunate. We do see the return, of like Dustin Hoffman as Shifu. Ian McShane does reprise his role as Tai Lung, which in terms of the returning villains like Tai Lung, and Shen and Kai, who all come back, but only Tai Lung comes back while speaking. It's all because Chameleon is trying to steal the Kung Fu off all the different Kung Fu masters in order to be the greatest Kung Fu master of all time, to be taken more seriously. Which, is a nice idea for a plot, but it just doesn't work. It doesn't sit well for me. And like I said, just the new characters don't have enough personality for them. Like Awkwafina's character of Zen, this Kozak fox, who's this thief who, they go to this grand city, the biggest city in all of China, the heart of everything. And we find out she's got this little cult of people in the sewers hiding out, this den of thieves. And we find out that she's no longer wanted. We find out she's a wanted criminal as well. This is the person who's supposed to be the Dragon Warrior mind. I just don't buy Po's relationship with her as well. You've also got this side thing of both of Po's dads, who all of a sudden lose faith and trust in Po. Both Mr. Ping and Lee, Po's biological father, again played by Bryan Cranston, they just don't trust or believe in Po. And there's no reason for it. They show concern, that obviously they're worried because the chameleon is built up to be this massive threat, But considering what he's faced in the past with Tai Lung and Shen and Kai, he went to the spirit realm, you know, taken out of this plane of existence, and was fine. You didn't show as much concern as you are here. They follow him through the whole movie, and it's about them learning to move on, learning to be braver, tougher. And it just distracts you from the chameleon, which should be your core focus for the movie. So there's just too much going on. There's not enough development, if I'm perfectly honest. The comedy really grates me. I miss the serious nature and the absence of the Furious Five and Master Shifu for most of the story. And even Master Shifu feels like he's a diet version of what he used to be and really dumbed down. Is really disappointing. You know, Jack Black does a pretty good job as Poe, but even he feels like it's dialed in a little bit. So it was just a bit disappointing overall to see. So if I'm to be perfectly honest and to rate the, you know, Kung Fu Panda 4 out of 10, I'm actually going to give it a 4, because if I'm honest, is it one that I'm going to jump back to watch really quickly? Probably not. I'm probably going to stick with the trilogy, you know, 1, 2 and 3. I will obviously go back and watch Kung Fu Panda 4 occasionally, especially if we get like a Kung Fu Panda 5. I might need a bit of a refresher, because I'm sure some of those characters would return. But overall, yeah, I was just very disappointed, and that's such a shame, because I had high hopes, but I had seen some reviews and some thoughts, and I did, you know, slightly suspect it was going to be a bit of a lower bar, but it is unfortunate. But yeah, I think a 4 out of 10 for Kung Fu Panda 4 is about what I'm going to do. So now that I've talked about the 4 movies, I'm just going to quickly wrap up my thoughts, and I want to mention 1 or 2 other things that I forgot to mention earlier about the Kung Fu Panda franchise. So just to summarise with the Kung Fu Panda franchise, it overall is fairly good, fairly strong and fairly consistent in the animation department. Does fall a little bit flat in the latter 2 movies, especially in the 4th movie, but the first 2 are so strong that it more than makes up and helps for the 3rd movie, and the 3rd movie is still fairly enjoyable, has some great themes, some great characters and some fantastic acting. Overall it is a great time. I should have mentioned as well earlier is that between a lot of the movies as well, like the Shrek franchise, which has spin-offs and stuff, the Kung Fu Panda franchise also has a few other spin-offs, TV shows, like mini films, like between the 1st and 2nd movie, you've got like the Secrets of the Furious Five, which goes into detail a little bit on how each of the Furious Five became who they were meant to be. And it's done really, really nicely, and the stories are done really well. It's Poe telling the kids of the Jade Palace, you know, how Tigress became Tigress and Mantis became Mantis. It's stuff like that, and it's done fantastically. So I'd highly recommend checking those out. I haven't actually delved into like the TV show per se, so I can't really fully comment there. But from the clips and bits I've seen, it's got a bit of a weird feel to it. I probably will check it out at some point, but for now I'm mostly just going to stick to like the short films and the core films in the franchise, which I would recommend both of those things. But yeah, Kung Fu Panda, like I said, is a massive franchise like Shrek, so definitely worth checking it out. But I hope you did enjoy this franchise discussion on Kung Fu Panda. If you did, please like it by giving it a thumbs up and comment down below your thoughts on the Kung Fu Panda franchise, and subscribe if you are new. But for now, this is the Nerdy Grail signing off. I hope you've had an amazing day, and I will see you all next time. Bye for now, everyone.